Hello Raptors fans and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we will be discussing the Toronto Raptors game against the Detroit Pistons. But before we do that, I want to talk about the Toronto Raptors' road struggles. Yes, the Toronto Raptors have been the worst team on the road this season. They have not won a single game. They are 0-10 on the road, and I want to dive into why that is. The reason that the Raptors aren't playing very well on the road is because some of their players are playing much better at home and terribly on the road. Winning games is when your players play well. If the players on your team play better than the players on the opponent's team, you tend to win those games pretty often. If your players play worse, then you probably won't win the games. So if you want to find out why you're not winning games on the road, all you have to do is look at the splits. You look at the stats that players have when they are at home and the stats that players have when they are on the road. And most of the players on the Toronto Raptors have pretty similar counting stats and efficiency stats on the road and at home. Some players like Grady Dick, Ochai Agbaji, and Chris Boucher, they even play better on the road and have better shooting splits and statistics in general when they're playing on the road. There are some players, however, who are in the other direction. I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore. RJ Barrett has had the biggest disparity between his play at home and his play on the road. It is not a small difference. It is extremely stark, the difference between his play at home and his play on the road. His play at home is that of a star player, perhaps even a superstar player. If you just look at the raw stats, they are unbelievable. At home, RJ Barrett scores 29 points with 7 rebounds, 6 assists on 62% true shooting percentage, which is unbelievable. If he were averaging that on the season, he would be a no doubt about it most improved candidate, probably would be in the running for the MVP. I mean, those are literal superstar numbers. 29 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists on 62% true shooting. Those are unreal. So let's look at his stats on the road. 18 points, big difference there. 5.8 rebounds, 6 assists on 44 true shooting percentage, which is over 10% below the median true shooting percentage in the NBA. That is well below the Mendoza line for a player in the league. You can't shoot that poorly and maintain the usage of 30%. Simply, you would not be allowed to do that on pretty much any team in the league, even a team with a record as poor as the Raptors. So between the road and home, he's scoring 11 more points at home with 1 more rebound and similar assists, but the gap between the efficiency between home and the road is really what it comes down to. He is extremely efficient at home and extremely inefficient on the road. And when a player is using around 30% of the possessions while they're on the floor, they are going to be a driving factor in whether you are winning the game or losing the game. You're using almost 1/3 of the possessions shooting the ball. And when Scottie Barnes wasn't in the lineup, it was higher than that. He is the point guard for the Toronto Raptors when he is on the floor. And since Emmanuel Quickley has been out, he has been tasked with that role. So if you want to diagnose the Toronto Raptors problem on the road, you don't really have to look very hard in order to figure out what the main problem is. The Toronto Raptors have a very, very efficient star guard at home, and when they go out on the road, that player morphs from Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde and becomes almost completely unplayable. And it's unfortunate that that's what's happened this season. I think that the Toronto Raptors should have won at least one road game. They were in many, many, many close road affairs, including last night's game against the Pistons, but they came up short in every single one of those games, and RJ Barrett is a huge culprit there. Anyway, let's get into the player evaluations for last night. We will start with Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes had a very good game, especially in the first half. He had 20 points in the first half. He had 17 points in the second quarter. It was a godly performance in the second quarter. He hit 3 threes in a row. And one of the most impressive things that I saw Scottie Barnes do last night was completely do like a psychic attack on Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley is a shooting guard for the Pistons. He's bounced around the league. He was on the Bucks last season. He's a good shooter. He plays with a bit of an edge, and he came over when he fouled Scottie Barnes and smacked the ball out of Scottie Barnes' hands and got a technical foul. And from that moment forward, it became Scottie Barnes' mission to kind of just like psychologically destroy this guy. It was a thorough demolition of Malik Beasley's psyche. So there was a clip making its rounds on social media where Malik Beasley started off the game pretty hot and was hitting threes. And he did a little shimmy on the sideline. When he hit the three, he was feeling good. He was playing with vim and vigor. And then Scottie Barnes, when he started rolling, he did the little shimmy as well. Another thing that he did during the game was when Malik Beasley slapped the ball out of his hands and got a tech, Scottie Barnes remembered that. And after Malik Beasley fouled him another time, Scottie Barnes put the ball out in front of Malik Beasley and said, "Hey, you wanna do it again? You wanna slap the ball out of my hands again?" That was pretty funny, and the attack worked. It was insane. Malik Beasley started the game hot and then proceeded to miss every single one of his shots the rest of the game after Scottie did the bullying on him. And today is Malik Beasley's birthday. I saw it online. It was kind of a rude thing for Scottie to do, but it seemed to work. I have no idea. I guess he knew that Malik Beasley was just on the verge of crashing out, and he pushed all the right buttons to make it happen. But in terms of, I digress. In terms of his actual play on the court, he was good. 31 points, 14 rebounds, 7 of them offensive, 7 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, only 1 turnover. He was 12 for 26 from the field, 4 of 5 from the free throw line. He was the best player on the floor for either team, maybe Jaden Ivey, who was fantastic and only missed 3 shots. But for the Raptors, certainly he was the best player. He was dominating the ball. He was hitting the glass. He was passing the ball, scoring inside. He had a couple of clutch buckets. He did smoke a layup in the final couple of minutes that would have put the Raptors ahead. But in general, you can't be displeased with the performance that he had. I think he was the Raptors' best player. There's not much else to say other than the fact that I thought it was kind of interesting what he did with Malik Beasley, but he had a throwback performance where he looked dominant. Next up, we will talk about RJ Barrett. And the reason I'm just going to talk about him was because we mentioned him at the beginning. This will kind of be a continuation of what I saw this game. RJ Barrett had a fantastic game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and it's no surprise if you listen to the beginning of this, he is like a superstar at home. He plays like a star. This game was a microcosm of what happens on the road. Extremely inefficient, 17 points on 19 shots. He was 1 of 6 from 3. He did hit it like a clutch 3, but only after like making so many disastrous plays. He only had 2 assists. That's usually his calling card. He's a very good playmaker, but he only had 2 assists, 3 rebounds, a steal, and 3 turnovers. And just looked out of sorts. He was making mistakes on defense. All of the bad things that he does when he's having a bad game, dominating the ball and still continuing to shoot as if he's the hot hand. And then on defense, falling asleep and letting his man get free and shoot open shots. There were a whole bunch of really negative things that he did this game. And I think in the clutch, especially when the Raptors really needed a bucket and they really needed to get over the hump and they were relying on him and Scottie Barnes to kind of push them over the finish line, he was kind of MIA. He tried and did not succeed. There was one play where he drove inside, threw the ball up, and it went over the backboard. It was not a pretty night. Lots of regrettable things from RJ Barrett, and hopefully he can figure things out on the road soon. I mean, I thought that last night was a good opportunity for him to do that against a team like the Pistons, but it wasn't in the cards and he wasn't able to get the job done. Next up, we'll talk Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl did not have a good game. He had an excellent game against Jalen Duren. The last time they played against the Pistons, he kind of dominated him. The shoe was on the other foot last night. Jalen Duren, I think, took it to Jakob Poeltl. Maybe he took it a bit more seriously based on what happened the last time they played against one another. Jakob Poeltl had 8 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks, 2 turnovers. He was just not making his shots, and they needed something from somebody in the starting lineup. Just a little extra, somebody to be more efficient other than Scottie Barnes. And he had a bunch of opportunities. He had a bunch of shots that were on the inside in his spots where he usually is efficient, and he wasn't able to convert. So this is kind of a worrying trend for Jakob Poeltl. This is his second kind of underwhelming game in a row. He didn't even get the double-double. I mean, he got the boards, but he didn't get the points. If he just scored one of those kind of gimme shots, he would have been able to get the double-double, but he didn't even manage to do that. Ochai Agbaji. This was kind of a nightmare game for almost all the starters except for Scottie Barnes. Ochai Agbaji went 0 for. He had 0 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 turnover. In 24 minutes, went 0 for 4 from the field and missed some clutch buckets. I mean, you can blame him, but it wasn't like he did anything wrong. He just didn't do a good enough job on Jaden Ivey, who scored the game-winning basket over top of him. And that's another unfortunate highlight for Ochai Agbaji, who has been on the receiving end of a few game winners this year. And it wasn't that he was like out of position. It was just that he did not bother the shot enough. Yeah, I mean, this was just a very poor game from him. He didn't do anything on offense, and on defense, he wasn't good enough. So hopefully he's able to get back on track. I'm kind of worried that some of the better players for the Toronto Raptors so far this season have been slowing down and not really showing up for them. Agbaji, Poeltl, those two guys were very consistent and solid for the Raptors over the first, 15 or so games of the season, and now they're starting to cool off, which is not a good sign. I was thinking that the Raptors were going to turn the corner, and they're kind of, they're not delivering. And Davion Mitchell, not a good night. He had 3 points, 1 for 7 from the field. He hit 1 3. It was kind of at the end of the game, and that was good. It was clutch or whatever, but 1 for 7 from the field, 1 rebound, 3 assists, a steal, 0 turnovers. I guess that's decent, but unless he is turning in a masterclass defensive performance on one of the best star players in the league, like he did against the Timberwolves, and other players are chipping in on offense to make up for the fact that he's not scoring, then you can overlook his offensive shortcomings. When you need a basket and when you need the creation skills of a lead guard, Davion Mitchell is just not going to give it to you consistently enough. It feels like he has a decent enough handle to get into the lane, but he just does not have the finishing moves. He doesn't have the last step to get to the rim. He doesn't have a consistent mid-range game. His passes are often just safe passes, which is fine because I don't think I'd rather that than the turnovers that he was getting at the beginning of the season, but he's not creating opportunities for other teammates. So for example, Ochai Agbaji relies on other players to get him the ball in his spots. And Davion Mitchell, he can't move the defense enough, and then he doesn't have the court vision to make a play to get role players like Ochai Agbaji involved and shooting open shots. It's just not enough, is what I'm saying. And though he's good on defense, don't get me wrong, that's the other half of the court. When he's important for the Raptors defense, he's just not getting it done on the offensive end. And this was a low-scoring game. I mean, it was in the hundreds, but this is the new NBA. You got to be able to score, and he has not been able to do that. Off of the bench, they played extended minutes, and they gave the Raptors a lift. The starters just did not have it outside of Scottie Barnes. Chris Boucher, another good game. 10 points on 9 shots, 7 rebounds, 4 of them offensive. He made big plays like putback dunks. He gets the team energized. He's a good player. 7 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, 0 turnovers. He continues to be a very good player in transition. He can handle the ball in transition. He is a good player, and he is always one of the best players on the Raptors, especially off of the bench. Next up, we got to talk about Jamal Shead because he had a great game. He scored 8 points. He was 2 of 3 from 3. That's good. Fortunately, he was 3 of 9 from the field, so he wasn't able to score inside very efficiently, but he made a bunch of plays on offense and on defense. 8 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, 0 turnovers. He was kind of making things happen, and it's a really encouraging performance from him because he was starting to tail off. He was not really contributing very much. The past 10 games or so, he was really good at the beginning of the season, and up until recently, he was kind of falling off. So it's good to see him have a bounce-back performance. Bruno Fernando had a good offensive game, 9 points on 7 shots, a couple nice dunks. He had 4 rebounds, 5 assists. Wow, impressive. So, I mean, Bruno Fernando he's very hit and miss, but he did a very good job. I think he had a better game than Jakob Poeltl. You can't say that very often. He had more points than him. He looked good. Jamison Battle had a good game. I think even on defense, he was active. He was doing stuff. They ran him off of the line and he had a little floater. I thought he was pretty impressive this game. This might have been one of his best games of the season. He was 4 of 9 from the field, only 1 of 5 from 3, so not great in that respect. But he did enough outside of that made me impressed with what he was doing. Even on defense, I thought he did a pretty good job. So 9 points, 4 boards, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block, 0 turnovers. Good game from him. And then Jonathan Mobo, he continues to be a very good defensive player. He had 5 points, 3 rebounds, an assist, but he did have 2 turnovers. So that's unfortunate. He does like to handle the ball, but he does have a habit of getting caught if he gets an offensive rebound or they give it to him in the mid post and he picks up his dribble. I feel like he's a face to the basket type of player. He doesn't really have a post game. So when he has his back to the basket and he's being covered by another big, he has a really hard time. He gets bottled up and he can turn the ball over there. He also hit a bank 3-point shot. So he's made a 3 in each of his last 2 contests. I don't know if whenever you hit a bank wing 3, that is not a good sign. That is just a very bad miss that turns into a score. That means you're way off of the mark and it just somehow goes in anyway. So I don't know if that's a good sign, but I mean, it's nice that he hit a 3. Hopefully he can continue to hit 3s. That would be a big boon for the Toronto Raptors if their sort of undersized energy big could stretch the floor out a little bit. Yeah, I'm still liking what I'm seeing from Jonathan Mobo. It wasn't as good as his 13-point performance in the game previous, but again, I thought the bench played really well. He was a part of that. And that was the game. Really frustrating that the Raptors were not able to pull this one out. I think the starters really kind of let everyone down. Scottie Barnes played with a lot of juice and was really going. He was carrying the Raptors, and then the bench stepped in and they really did a good job lifting up the Raptors and making the game competitive, even though the starters didn't have it. The Raptors being in a bunch of close games, it's discouraging. I want to see the Toronto Raptors nix the futility. If you win ugly, a lot of the sins can be forgiven. A lot of the things like the blemishes that players have, you can look over them until the next loss. And it would be nice for me to be able to talk about how the Raptors were able to gut it out. I'd love to be able to have that kind of narrative instead of just looking at all of the players and seeing these problems with the team. I don't like to do that. I want to be able to give you guys good news and talk about all of the positive stuff that the Toronto Raptors are able to do, even if they don't have the greatest record. But they haven't been able to do that. And I have been the guy who has come out and said, like, I think that the Toronto Raptors are about to turn the corner. They've been playing very positive basketball, even though they're winning games. This was a big step back from that. One of the big issues with this team is shooting. Huge issue, especially with Grady Dick out of the lineup last night. They are lacking offensive firepower. He's a big part of the team, one of the leading scorers on the team, and he really frees up the floor for everybody else, especially the pick and roll, the Jakob RJ pick and roll. That is a big element to why they are able to have as much space as they do. He's missing. Emmanuel Quickley is missing. They were also on the second night of a back-to-back, so they didn't have legs. It was pretty apparent. That's why they went to the bench. This was one of the weaker spots in the schedule. The Pistons were missing Cade Cunningham. It's just a shame. It's kind of reminding me of the Tampa season when they couldn't catch a break and they lost all of those extremely close games. Just a real shame. Hopefully the Toronto Raptors are able to find at least some solace. Maybe they can crack the goose egg they have on the road tomorrow night when they play the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans have some good news. They are getting back DeJounte Murray, who has been on the injury reserve list for pretty much the entire season. Herb Jones, DeJounte Murray, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum have all been injured for them, very similar to the Raptors. They've been missing a lot of their team. So that explains why they have not been good this season. With DeJounte Murray returning to the lineup, that is a sigh of relief for them and definitely not a great thing for the Toronto Raptors because they've kind of struggled against DeJounte Murray over the years. So this will be a game between two bottom feeders. And, you know, it's always entertaining when two similarly matched teams are able to play against one another. It can be a very entertaining game, even if both of the teams aren't very good. I mean, I thought that the game against the Pistons was good as well. So hopefully the Raptors are able to pull that one out. And that is the episode. What do you think of the Toronto Raptors away record? Are they going to go 0 for 41 in away games this season? Or will they be able to manage to get, 5? 6? Is that too high, too low? Let me know how many away games you think the Raptors will be able to win this season. Let me know here in the comments and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I always love hearing from other Toronto Raptors fans. We've got the greatest fan base in the world. Love talking to you guys. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow, helps people see the content. And as always, thanks for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.